trial, of course, the culmination of many rounds of defeats for defendant Trump.
Donald Trump once again in a courtroom with the fate of his business empire now on trial.
I decline to answer the question.
The 2019 Statement of Financial Condition contained false and misleading valuations and statements. Is that correct?
Same answer.
We haven't done a damn thing wrong, and they dragged Don and I into it as collateral damage. You know why?
I should have worn makeup.
But I will not be bullied. I will not be harassed. This case will go on.
She was right. The case went on, and while there were many different tactics to try to obfuscate or delay, as our guest Bill Kristol just mentioned, she would win those rounds. As for today's ruling, now years in the making, it was quite exhaustive. The judge found, I want to show you this so you can see with your own eyes some of the key parts, that in order to borrow more at lower rates, Trump and his team would basically submit blatantly false financial data to accountants, which drove the fraud. And then across these 92 pages, the judge dealt with the claims and the evidence, finding that when confronted at trial with the statements, with the receipts about all of this lying, Trump's defendants, fact and expert witnesses, defendant is Trump's side, they simply, quote, denied reality. Now, as a practical matter, this fine is staggering for a company the size of Trump org. The total, with the 300-plus baseline and the interest that we just heard the Attorney General speak about in that press conference, takes the total up to over $450 million, plus barring Trump from operating in the business side of real estate in New York for 3 years. The massive penalty, of course, is on top of other recent huge fines like the defamation case and round one of the defamation case. That alone goes up to $90 million. Legal fees recently were $50 million. Donald Trump has managed to get himself in a position, largely, if not entirely by his own making, where he has over $500 million in legal fees and counting. We're joined now by Dan Alexander, a senior editor at Forbes, the author of White House Inc., How Donald Trump Turned the Presidency into a Business. Welcome back. At a certain point, numbers become very hard to measure and differentiate. I don't know that when you start saying, oh, it's $100 million, it's $300 million, all in, it's $500 million. These aren't numbers most people deal with. Most companies don't deal with these kind of legal fees. So is this a big cost to Trump org tonight?
Yeah, this is devastating. You know, let's start with the most basic question. How much cash does Donald Trump have right now? He's sitting on roughly $400 million in cash. The numbers that you just outlined are far higher than that. So all of a sudden, he's going to have to come up with not just $100 or $150 million of cash, but remember, you need some cushion to operate a real estate business.
Sure.
So he's going to have to come up with multiple hundreds of millions of dollars in cash. And there are two ways to do that. One is you borrow against your current assets. Now, one part of this ruling that is really problematic for Trump is that it bars him from borrowing from New York chartered financial institutions for 3 years. So taking out those sort of enormous loans against assets is not going to be as easy for him as it would be for any other developer who owns the exact same assets. The other thing that he could do is he could sell assets. But if he sells assets, everybody knows that he needs to sell assets. And although Donald Trump has always said that his properties are worth much more than they are, he's been very, very reluctant to sell anything at anything close to its true value. So now all of a sudden he's going to have to be cutting deals on fire sales. This is going to get really ugly for him and for the Trump organization.
You mentioned the Trump organization, and while we've just discussed a lot about Donald Trump, he basically tried to hand off partial responsibility or operative responsibility to his sons. And they're really called out in this ruling as well. It cites multiple examples of financial wrongdoing. The judge writes that Eric Trump was part of a habit of inflating the value of an estate in New York, that in 2014 an appraiser advised him, Eric Trump verbally, he had appraised that development at about 14 mil. Within that same week, Trump advised to McConney to use $161 million valuation. The judge also says that Eric Trump knowingly inflated a different property each year from 15 to 18. He advised, again, that same official, who was sort of the controller, to leave $101 million as it, despite his knowledge that it was worth less than half that. And the judge writes, quote, although Eric Trump testified he had no idea if he intended the banks to rely upon the certification, the court finds the testimony not credible, as Eric Trump was aware that the certifications were required for the loans. And so, Dan, I take that detail back to you. This is a situation where at a distance, people look at a phone alert or they look at social media. They say, oh, they're going after Trump again, this and that. Oh, they have it in for him. We heard that as a Trump's defense when he spoke tonight. But it actually looks, I got to say, pretty meticulous in that point by point. This is not speculative when you have in the same week receipts showing someone knew X and then lied about it and wanted to call it Y.
Well, the fundamental problem for Eric Trump, Donald Trump Jr., and Donald Trump is that this case relies on a mountain of documentary evidence. And you can't argue against that. Their signatures are all over these papers saying, we attest to the truthfulness of this number. We attest to the truthfulness of that number. And then they go into court and say, oh, we didn't really know much about these numbers. It's very hard to take that back. Now, financially for them, one of the things that really hurts is that part of the penalty is a disgorgement against the profits from the D.C. hotel that they owned along with their father. Their father has not let them in on many of his deals, but he did give them each 7% of the D.C. hotel. And that was a very successful deal for them. It sold for almost $400 million and gave them a nice windfall of about $4 million apiece, which is real money to anybody, but even to them, that's real money. Now this case is going to
even
claw
to them,
back
especially with how little he involves them in.
Exactly. This is going to claw back the one deal that they had really been a part of and had gotten major money from. Now that's all getting washed away, too.
Really interesting. Dan Alexander on a breaking news night. We appreciate you and you running the numbers for us. Our thanks. I want to tell everyone at home, we've got a new guest coming in here. We got a lot. We're juggling on this big story. And I have a little more of our breakdown. I told you we'd be doing this piecemeal over the course of the night. And, I always keep it real with you. Sometimes when you're watching those big Supreme Court days, people say, oh, you could pull up the case, read it yourself. If you do want to read this case, that's great. I welcome and encourage it. But this is not like a Supreme Court case or some of the other rulings we've had that are easy to read. We do have the scan up on the screen if you want to pull it down. But I'll tell you that at times it gets quite arcane because it goes through all of these properties piece by piece. And so what we're going to endeavor to do tonight over bite-sized morsels is show you some of the key parts. And that brings us to another one I wanted to show you that's pretty interesting, which is the other son, Don Jr. We just mentioned that $4 million liability, how this disgorgement provision basically will be tough. It has teeth for everyone involved. Don Jr. also is part of that ban on doing business. For his father, it's a 3-year ban. For him, it's a 2-year ban. And remember, Don Jr. also got dragged into all this. He had to sit. He tried to run. He tried to duck. He tried to delay. But he had to sit for a deposition where he proved quite vague.
Do you have any familiarity with an acronym GAP, G-A-A-P?
Generally accepted accounting principles, yes.
Okay. How did you become familiar with that acronym?
Probably in Accounting 101 at Wharton.
Okay. What do they teach you about generally accepted accounting principles in Wharton?
Well, I'm not an accountant, but that they are generally accepted.
Anything else?
That's pretty much what I remember from Accounting 101.
Sounds like a fun day. Imagine doing that for 3 or 4 hours. Now, the lawyer for the state, for the attorney general here going against Don Jr., asked about who had ultimate authority for the decisions. And he basically then had to admit what was known and what the documents showed, that it was a trio here of Weisselberger himself and his bro. That's a key revelation that goes to responsibility. Now, in today's ruling, brand new, this is the key parts I told you I'm going to share with you. The judge finds that despite disclaiming responsibility for or knowledge of certain statements of financial conditions, Trump Jr. would insist that all the material statements were accurate. So that's another example where the judge went through it all and found this tension, at times basically misleading material. Fraud is the legal word. Lies is another word. And I want to add to our discussion here in this rolling coverage, New York Times investigative reporter Russ Buetner with a focus on Trump's finances. Welcome.
Nice to be here. Thanks, Mike.
Here we are sitting around. You might be the closest thing to a TV accountant. We'll give you that. You definitely know more than Bill.
Yes.
Fair?
Question.
Right?
Fair.
And so you can
low bar, however.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
Kind of insulting, actually.
Yeah, I apologize. But these things I've told viewers very directly. It's hard to read a whole ruling like this. Even in the business side, there are people who don't know as much about it. You and the Times have been really exhaustive on this. And so my first question to you is just big picture. Does this ruling and the tensions that it finds, does it match what you've found and your understanding of this? Is it worse? Is it better? I mean, just because you've been on this for so long.
Well, I think the big trend that we see is what we saw when we analyzed his income taxes for 20 years, which is that he was really rich about a decade ago from money from entertainment and from endorsement and licensing deals. In 2011, just those categories, which were absent any business expertise, he brought home $51 million from that. And he used that money to fill in the gaps on some money-losing businesses that he had created himself, and also to create some of these new businesses. And then as that money trailed off, as The Apprentice became less popular, all of that sort of dried up, and it went from $51 million to $3 million by 2018. And he was burning through cash to keep filling in the holes that he was created. That's one of the fundamental aspects of this lawsuit, is that he was lying about how much cash he had on hand. He was appropriating other people's cash, basically, to fill in that hole and make it look like he had more than he did. And the Attorney General found that he would have been cash flow negative in 2017, not cash flow negative, actually cash negative. He wouldn't have any cash at all, absent the fraud.
Can you try that again without that term? He would have X. He would have what?
He would have had no money.
He would have had no money.
No money.
Okay.
No money.
So that would be bad for him because...
Well, first of all, he would not have been able to keep all of his businesses open. He would have had to shrink even more. And I think that's what's happened behind the scenes here. Part of the ill-gotten gains here are the sales of assets. Donald Trump has been shrinking for the last few years in terms of his businesses in order to sort of generate cash to fill the holes that his poor judgments have made in other businesses.